exciting to chew. Bacon Fest, we're expecting you. And love, Iowa bacon love.
Jason Aldean, Full Throttle Tour 2025, powered by Patriot Mobile.
When the lights come on,
Friday, September 19th, Wells Fargo Arena. With Nate Smith and Ray Lynn. Jason Aldean, on sale now at iowaeventcenter.com. Jason Aldean live. Scott Dochterman, 𝗙𝗃𝗍𝗶𝗹. Together on one pod, talking Hawks and all things Big Ten. Powered by GameDay Men's Health, with locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, and North Liberty. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Legends and Listeners. Exclusively on Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. Welcome to Legends and Listeners on this Thursday morning from the Channel Seed Studios, only on Iowa Everywhere. The Masters is underway. Hopefully you guys got my Masters bets on the Iowa Everywhere feed. Locks, I tell you. It's 𝗙𝗃𝗍𝗶𝗹 here of the Des Moines Register, Scott Dochterman of The Athletic, episode 88. Scott, April is busier than it used to be, I feel like. At least it is for me. I know your job's changed a little bit, but man, I feel like April is just like every day you wake up, you have no idea what the day holds.
It's been threefold for me for a few years now. You know, it's the last couple of years has been Caitlin Clark Central, then heavy dose of spring football concurrently with NFL draft coverage. It's kind of all mixed into one, and here we are again. It's the same type of deal, but I think this year, particularly for you, and you know, is the added coaching hire and at Iowa with Ben McCullum, and then I had to do a lot of Final Four stuff, so that really threw me even though I didn't go anywhere, I still had to do a lot. So it's been busy, no question.
Yeah, I mean, the last couple of years with the women's Final Four for sure, extended everything into April. But yeah, this year definitely dominated by men's basketball conversation. I haven't even thought about the NFL draft yet. I know you're all over it, and I saw Dane Brugler's Beast came out, right?
The Beast came out, yeah.
Beast came out, so I got to check that out. Check out the Hawkeyes in there, see what he has to say about that, see what he has to say about the Bears. But yeah, it's that time of year. And we haven't hardly gotten into any spring football. But, folks, good news. We are going to talk a pretty heavy dose of college football, spring football, a little later in this show. We might touch on a little bit of women's basketball news that has occurred since our last show. Raina Harmon departing to Florida Gulf Coast for the head coaching job there, obviously, as you guys know. But first, Scott, I think men's basketball continues to be the driving force of interest right now on the Hawkeye Sports beat as the Ben McCullum era takes shape. A slew of new signings since our last show. Names we knew probably were coming, but they're now signed, officially Hawkeyes on the roster. He can talk about them, and now he's filled out his coaching staff as well. So where do you want to start?
You know what? I think let's start with the coaching staff here. They finished it out here today with Luke, right? That was the last piece here from Texas Tech.
Yep, Luke Barnwell on Wednesday. They, I feel like that's kind of the marquee hire of this group, Scott.
It is. You know, he was with Texas Tech and Grant McCausland, and who's really I don't know if a mentor, but really a great friend from Ben McCullum, and he's from his staff. He was at Sunrise Christian Academy, which was where 𝗀𝗍𝗄𝗎𝗍 played, but they just missed each other. So I was kind of like, I wonder if there's that little connection, because there just isn't one yet, and we just missed that one. But that said, that is an elite academy, and he's been at Texas Tech and for a while now, and I think this is their marquee hire, as you said. Everybody else has kind of followed him from Drake and Northwest Missouri State, and now he's a Power 5 guy. So I hope that helps them when it comes to the portal. I know they're in on some guys, but they do need somebody who does have some Power 5 experience.
Well, yeah, and he comes from, I mean, Texas Tech was in the Elite Eight this year. Like you said, on the staff of Grant McCaslin, who's a terrific coach. And I didn't know that when they played Texas Tech at the time. I wasn't like super plugged in on all the elements of Drake until very late in the season. But that he and McCullum are like really close friends. And like, I can't remember what interview it was. Maybe it was even the Chris Williams pod. I can't remember. But he was asked by somebody if he could sit with like 3 coaches. And he picked McCaslin as one of the like any coach, dead or alive, and like McCaslin was one of the 3. So that's how much he respects him. So yeah, a big get to get Luke Barnwell. I assume, like I would get, we haven't heard from any additional on this, but I would think he's probably like the main assistant. I would like the right hand man. I would think that's why he would have come to Iowa. I don't know that, but that would be my perception, Scott.
Yeah, it's hard to say, where he fits in on that, but I would assume that if you're leaving from Texas Tech to go to Iowa for this staff, that you probably would be, whether it's associate head coach or lead staffer, and maybe this is part of his own plan too, that if he can go, because sometimes you just need that movement and that change of trajectory in your career pattern. To if he comes to Iowa and has some success, that maybe that leads him to his first head coaching job at a whether it's Power 5 or mid-major. So probably a good career move for him. But it's funny. Bryson Williams was like, man, when I everything's going like full circle for me, because he was a St. Joe Lafayette kid when I lived there on the north side of St. Joe, and which is, by the way, where I think John Miller's wife's from that part of St. Joseph.
Look at that connection.
Yeah. So there is 3 distinct areas of St. Joseph, by the way. It's like you're either from the north side, central, or south side. You're not from. If you're from one of the other 3, you don't count. But
okay,
it's great. It's a crazy part. So I'll be interested to talk to him sometime about that whole thing. But,
yeah, a little Missouri geography there from Scott Dochterman, folks.
Yeah.
You got Barnwell. Last thing on him, he was the 2021 and 22 Naismith High School Boys Coach of the Year. So that's pretty significant. Known as a good recruiter. So again, the staff's complete. 5 Drake transfers in house now, plus Cooper Koch. So really, as we speak in this very moment, 6 confirmed Hawkeyes. I thought it was a little bit of a surprise to me that Carter Kingsbury hit the portal on Wednesday. Trey Buchanan was not long before that at one of the walk-ons. So it's clear, Scott, that McCullum is, I don't want to say cleaning house, but just really tearing it down to the studs and building with people and guys he wants. Like, he didn't keep Gatens. He's just, I think you just got to let him do this, though. It's his program. And he doesn't seem like he's going to be told what to do in terms of that. And I'd say let him go.
Yeah. Ideally, in a perfect world, I consider Matt a friend. I've covered him since he was in high school, known him really well, respect the heck out of him. Would have loved to have seen him there, because nobody bleeds black and gold like Matt Gatens. It's obvious it wasn't working here. And when you have a new coach coming in, you do have to give him that leeway. And the one difference now between even 10 years ago for a situation like this is back then you'd have holdovers, because you'd have holdovers among your players. There might be a couple of guys who left, because they'd have to sit out a year, and now everybody's free to go and everybody's free to come. So there's really no need for that. And so that part's an unfortunate byproduct, but I think overall you've got to build it the way you want to build it. You've got to give them the ability to do that. And if that means everybody, including the walk-ons, have to go, then I guess you do it that way, and we'll be free to criticize him if it doesn't work, and we will. But I'm not going to get to that point. I'm going to wait and see how he performs, and not just this year. I mean, they're going to hit a rough spot a couple of times, I'm sure, and you got to give them some leeway there. But yeah, I think overall it's a brand new era. There's nothing hanging back. I mean, I don't see him holding on to, maybe there's a video coordinator or something that they'll hold on to, but other than that, it's a new era.
So I had to sit down with Ben McCullum on Tuesday. That went out on podcast Wednesday. My McCullum posted on this Thursday morning. It's on our radio show tonight on KXNO. So lots of ways you can get engaged with that 40-plus minute interview. Covered a ton of ground. Scott said he wants to add about 4 or 5 new transfers yet. Said he has a big man commitment. You know how these things go when we're recording. Maybe it's been announced by now. I expect it to be a younger guy, but again, that's not. He wasn't ready to say who it was in that interview because he can't talk about him yet because the person's not signed. So anyway, I know you. Thank you for listening as well. We were talking about it off the air. What stood out to you the most, and then maybe you can fire some questions my way about what kind of the course of the interview, I guess.
I was fascinated on hearing all the nuance and the things that you brought to my attention, and some of which I didn't even thought about, and I thought that was really fascinating. But I want to start with tone, and this is what I've got out of it, and you kind of tell me what you got out of it. And I think number one is I feel like he is a very confident coach, and and you got to be a confident coach. You've got to have some swagger to you, and I think he's got it. I think Fran did too, and still does in a different way. Mainly it's because of where they grew up, but he feels like, and tell me if I'm wrong or misreading this, that he feels like his system can work pretty much with any player he has, and he's ready to make it happen. What's kind of your read on that?
Confident is the word that definitely comes to mind first and foremost. But you look at his track record, Scott, he's lost 26 games since 2017, the 2016-17 season. 26 games as a head coach. The winning percentage is over 91%. And, these are, you say, oh, yeah, but a lot of it's D2. Well, he's like in the national tournaments of these things and winning them. And they would have won 5, most likely would have won 5 championships if not for COVID. And, I think that, I know that, it's D2, but what stood out to me was how confident he was and how they go about winning games. And I loved hearing him talk about and I don't want to give the whole thing away. I really want you guys to listen to it because I think it reminded me of kind of the Tim Lester pod I did last summer because it got people Lester, as you know, Scott, he's very easy to talk to. He can explain things very well. He gets you excited about the nuances of football, of play calling, of just development, and I feel like McCullum is very much communicating in a similar way because he talks about how he Lester kind of talked about how he progressed as a young offensive coordinator and figured things out, and this is who he is now. But McCullum started out, I think you would probably know who the coach is, learning from a Northwest Missouri coach who was very defensive minded. Okay,
he was, absolutely.
Okay, so what was the guy's name?
Steve Tappmeyer.
Okay, there you go. I couldn't remember it off the top of it, but I knew you asked about it, and I'm impressed.
Yeah, he was a really good coach too. He's not as good as Ben McCullum, but he was. They prided themselves on defense. It was fun to watch. I'll have to ask about this. The guards, the opponents would come across half court and they'd slap the floor. They were ready to strap in defensively, and Steve Tappmeyer always had that towel over his shoulder, So it was, they were a really good program, but nowhere near what he did. That's off the charts.
So McCullum's transition as a head coach, he talked about how started out as that really defensive minded coach, like win with defense, as he put it. to win big games, you got to make big stops.
Yes.
And boy, does that not resonate with Iowa men's basketball fans right now? Because how many times have you seen, you got to get a stop and then, well,
never did.
didn't get the stop or whatever,
Never.
And a lot of times the other way around too, like the other team would get a stop. You just think about the 13-14 season or or 12-13 season, especially under the NIT season where they just lost so many close games. You think about Iowa just needed that one bucket, but Michigan State would get that stop, And so that's how he built his program at Northwest Missouri State. Well, about 7 years in, he kind of, I don't know if it was a revelation or exactly what transpired, but he turned his attention to offensive efficiency. And once his teams became offensively efficient, and he explains it more, by taking layups, free throws, and 3-pointers. Okay.
Yeah.
And he kind of made a little comment in there. I didn't put it in my column, but made a little comment well, Iowa last year shot a lot of mid-range shots, and that's just that's not efficient basketball.
Yeah.
Which is not. It's not. Now teams might give that to you and you have to take it. But anyway, layups, free throws, 3-pointers, that's the way. And just taking really great shots. Okay.
Yeah.
If you look at some old Northwest Missouri State clips, it's like pump fake pass. It's just like constantly ball movement, cutting, all this stuff. And finally someone gets a wide open three and hits it, inevitably. Yeah. So combine the efficient offense with, and that's what they became at Northwest. Okay. They became an efficient offensive team, so efficient that teams had to prepare for that. And then, as he put it, and then they figured out, well, they still got to score on us too, because they still had that defensive tenacity, the toughness, because of the guys he recruited. And doesn't that sound like just music to your ears if you're an Iowa basketball fan?
No question. And I really took keen interest to that kind of sequence and those questions you asked. And I mean, there really was kind of this cutoff period when they went from good to great in Division II era, and a lot of that was right with the 2015-16 season when they first reached plus 50% shooting from the field, and that was led into the next year, which they won their first national title. And I mean, his last 9 years, they were plus 50% from the field each of those years, and then defensively they were. Here's one of the years here, the 21 year where they won the national title. They shot 53.4% from the field, and they held opponents to less. That was their worst year defensively, but it was like 45%. That's just unbelievable what the efficiency with which you play, and people want to tie him to this Licklider narrative, which is just absolutely asinine. I don't even want to give people time of day with that. But what I look at is the best offense that fits this, and the team that fits this, are the 80s Indiana teams. Because this was pre-shot clock era. They grinded you into a meatball on defense because they were constant motion, constant movement, and they had athletes, and they would grind you and grind you and grind you to the point of, fine, score, let's get going. And then on defense, they were as tough as hell. I mean, under Bobby Knight. They haven't been that way since Bobby Knight. But that's where they were on defense, and that's why they were winning NCAA championships, Big Ten championships with regularity. Going there was like, going to the dentist. I mean, it was just horrible. and that's kind of what I envision with this when he gets the players that he wants to run this offense because of the ruthless efficiency. And as we saw and have seen, and he mentioned it and kind of took shot a little bit here and there about Iowa's defense, but it was right on. Iowa's defense was the worst in the Big Ten over the last 9 years, like 7 times. It was the worst in the Big Ten. And I always thought that was the separator, even when they had their best teams with Luka Garza and with Keegan Murray and stuff, is when you get in the NCAA tournament, you're playing teams of comparable ability. You've got to get stops. And you've got to turn those stops into points. And like he had mentioned, when you're that efficient, you score, then you can set your defense and then pick it up as soon as they hit half court. It makes it really tough. And Iowa never did that under Fran. It was an absolute weak link. Everybody knew it, and they never changed a thing about it.
Yeah, and so I think that's part of the reason why it's so, I don't know, just intriguing to listen to him talk about it. Kind of like when Tim Lester, like I said, was talking about offense, like when you had these Brian Ferentz years where it's just like, come on, like like change, and then so it's just it's fun. It's fun to pick his brain, to learn about him, the way he operates. And I think the other part that I would take away from it, and again, I encourage you guys to check it out at hawkcentral.com. It's on Apple. Search Hawk Central. Just go on my Twitter feed, whatever. You can find it. It's actually pinned atop my Twitter profile. But he feels like he's got the guys. Like, not necessarily like, I mean, he didn't say like we're going to win the Big Ten or anything like that. But he's like, we went 4-1 against power conference competition last year with a lot of these guys, and now you add Cooper Koch, and they're going to add more guys in the portal. They're not going to have a 6-man roster, And then you think about Bennett Sturtz. Just, I mean, the stats he put up: 19 plus points per game, almost 6 assists per game, and the slowest offense in the country. I mean, could you imagine if he was running a faster offense? I mean, it really is like exactly what you think about when you think about tournament teams. Defense can get stops, good point guard. It's really not that complicated. And if the point guard plays 39.4 minutes per game, which last thing I'll just point out that I really loved about this interview was how much he got into strength and conditioning. I asked him about all these things that have been said about him, like, in-game master, point guard developer, all this stuff that people say about him. What do you think is mostly true about what people said about you? He said, I think it would be the strength and conditioning piece. He really believes in that, Scott. And I definitely wouldn't say Iowa has stressed that in the McCaffrey era. He stresses, I mean, it's honestly gonna be kind of like Iowa football, like where it's just a real emphasis on development, physical conditioning, outlasting people in the fourth quarter type of mentality. So again, those were kind of the highlights for me. Anything else from any comments on that?
Well, yeah, I would say what was interesting in covering the transition particularly from Todd to Fran to now, is Todd was more on the physical end of things to an extent. It wasn't great, but Fran went the other way. He wanted leaner athletes who could really run because, as we saw, this was one of the fastest or highest tempo, most efficient offenses. And I'm going to give him his flowers for that. I mean, they were a very efficient offense. They scored a lot. He wanted players to get up and down the floor. And so he wanted them leaner. I remember Eric May and Matt Gatens in particular, they had to lose 10 to 15 pounds. And I mean, they were pretty thick. They were sculpted, but he wanted them leaner so they could be better shape. So less weight, more run. But I think in this case, it's the opposite. It's physicality, it's toughness. And that's a smart way to go about things in the Big Ten. Because it is a very physical league, and we've seen it for a long time. Iowa's players got brutalized a lot in the Big Ten. And Fran would make a point about, without saying it, the officiating and everything like that. Well, you got to adjust. They're not going to adjust to you. And Fran never really did, and he got in trouble with a lot of officials too, which didn't help him any. I think in this case, that's probably, that's really fascinating. Now, I don't want to stem any of the excitement because this is the guy I thought that Iowa needed. He was number one in my book, and they're bringing in some really good players. Bennett Sturtz is as good as there is, and he's going to be one of the 10 best players in the Big Ten next year. They got to get some more athletes out of here, and I think he's got 3 that I think can be really good players in the Big Ten, and that doesn't count Cooper Koch, who I think could be the 4th. But you need probably 8. And so I think they need 3 or 4 more to grab out of the portal who could play. I mean, as good as he was at Northwest Missouri State, and no question that they were a dynasty there, and as great as they were at Drake, and they were the best team in the Valley and competed and beat Vanderbilt, who was a good team, and Missouri, who was a good team. To be able to do that was terrific. But one thing about mid-majors when you play those high major teams, though that's you're punching upward. You are really gunning for them. And for the teams that are playing you, they kind of overlook you. You're going to be playing 20 games in the Big Ten, and then you count Iowa State too. That you're like, okay, you're playing even competition, great coaches, great athletes, and you can out-coach them to an extent, but you're not going to be able to out-coach them for 40 minutes. So you're going to need 8 or 9 players who can get in these games and pack the game. And I think he can get those players, so I'm not trying to poo-poo it. And I think, Manyawu, is that how you pronounce it?
It's Manyao. It's very simple. Yeah, Manyao.
Manyao. Okay, Manyao. Tavion Banks, I guess it's more pronounced Tavion, not Tavian.
Tavion, yep.
We saw Tavian several times back in the day. And ‑Stertz, I think those guys are dudes. And I think Isaiah Howard's pretty good too.
He's pretty high on him.
Yeah. 𝗀𝗃𝗃 hasn't played a lot, but we'll see what happens there. I think Cooper Koch, I'm high on him. I think he's got some ability, and you're going to need a couple of big men. He mentioned it, and I think that was smart that he talked about with you the physicality that you're going to need from your posts. That is pivotal in the Big Ten, no question. You don't have one, you're hurting. So I think he's on the right track, and I like the confidence. And I think, it's going to take more players because, you look, Michigan State's pretty freaking good. Jace Richardson. I mean, the other teams in the Big Ten are not going to give you any ground. You're going to have to go out and take it. And Illinois in particular, I think, could be national championship caliber next year.
Yeah, he definitely needs at least one big, and probably 2. Needs more shooters because he plays a system that requires 5 shooters on the floor, basically. And he says he needs another backup point guard at least. I assume ideally you'd probably want like a younger guy that can learn from Stertz and learn the system and then take over next year. Another thing I liked that he said was just how the portal is just so expensive. And I mean, it's clear Iowa can't compete, They might be in decent shape, but they can't compete for like huge dollars. No. And so he said they're gonna have to sign high school kids and develop them, and then use NIL to retain them. I mean, especially the bigs, because that's going to be the hardest thing. That's going to be the hardest thing to bring in if you don't have it. The most expensive thing. Think about an edge rusher in the NFL. A guy you just can't get off a tree. You got to or a D tackle. 3
offensive tackles.
Yeah, that too.
Are
exactly
in college football right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a better analogy actually. But
Well, like JT Toppin today from Texas Tech, he's staying in school. He's making north of $3 million next year for Texas Tech. Texas Tech, the oil money must have kicked in before the tariffs because they are now just flush with cash. I mean, they went out and got an upper level, I suppose, Valley offensive tackle from Illinois State to go there. And you want to talk about high cost? It was like $800,000. And he was a guy that, I know one coach I talked to was like, he's compared him to a poor man's Nick DeYoung. Let's put it that way. So when you're talking about that, it's, they're spending money, and it's money that you can't have. You have to be efficient with. And in Iowa football, I think you brought it up multiple times, and I love the whole punting analogy and the kid wearing the punting.
That was the funniest part of the show. If you haven't listened to it, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but Iowa football knows how to win in the margins, and it knows how to attack in the margins, and when you develop your own, it's just like the NFL. If you draft a quarterback, a Brock Purdy, if you're San Francisco and you cultivate him, you've got four years before you got to pay him. In college football, college basketball, if you bring in somebody as a freshman and they contribute right away for you, and then you pay them the next year, you've got at least 2 years or 2 to 3 years in a football situation of use before you have to pay. And then you've got the factor, well, hey, I'm here, I love it here, I'm doing all this thing. Maybe you have a girlfriend, maybe you're enjoying your buddies and stuff like that. So you keep that momentum going, and they'll turn down that big offer from, if you're the left tackle for Iowa and somebody's offering you 3 times what you're making there to go to Oklahoma, and you say no, I'm going to stay at Iowa. That's the kind of stuff that can happen. Whereas if you're trying to go buy somebody in the portal and for free agency, you better have the jack to do it. And, the only unfortunate thing here, Chad, I thought, and he was good about, I thought he brought up a great point about Josh Dix, one that I thought all along too, is him and Bennett Sturtz in this offense would just be off the charts. And it's unfortunate that Dix left, understandable. And I thought the points that you and he both raised, emphasize that about, when you have kind of a sour taste in your mouth about a program and you look up and there's 2,800 people for a Big Ten game, maybe you just want that fresh start. And it's not hard to look across the Western River, Missouri River, and check out, Creighton, where they have 16,000 people there at every game. You might want to just go ahead and say, let's do that. And they're paying anyway. So
yeah. In fact, I covered the Iowa at Creighton game last year, which obviously Josh Dix and Price Sanford would have been a part of. And I know he didn't go there, or Owen Freeman, I guess, would have been a part of. That's what I meant. Yeah. And would have seen the fan support there too. But anyway, so speaking of strength and conditioning, getting your body right, Scott, GameDay Men's Health is the place to be. Maybe Ben McCullum can use GameDay Men's Health. I don't know if it's NCAA up to code. I have to check some of that, but our wonderful partner at GameDay Men's Health certainly are helping us out. I'm almost back out running again for my hip injury, but in the meantime, GameDay has been rolling with me. My exercise is doing well. I feel great. T levels are great. Mood's great. Energy's great. Performance is strong. They can help you out with testosterone replacement therapy. Get connected with GameDay Men's Health for a private, no obligation, free consultation at GameDayMen'sHealth.com or visit one of their locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, or North Liberty. GameDay Men's Health. Awesome place. And so.
Yeah. I was going to say, Chad, this is my, since this is coming out on Thursday, this is my 26th wedding anniversary.
Woo! Congrats.
And thanks to GameDay Men's Health, I'm at a lower weight than I was the day I got married. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That is awesome. The GameDay.
Yeah.
That's clip that one and save it. Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I'm heading towards an area I haven't been for a long time. So, I'm pretty excited about that.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Another guy that's kind of health improving, Scott, is Mark Gronowski. And we will be talking to him later on Thursday. But I wanted to bring up before we talk about Iowa football real quick, I just want to ask you this question because I think it's an interesting one, given that both guys are coming up a level for 1 year, highly accomplished at their level. Bennett Sturtz or Mark Gronowski, who has the better year for the Hawkeyes in 2025, 2026?
Well, and we throw Lucy Olson in this too. She was a pretty good
right. Yeah, I mean, they have to top her. Let's say that.
Okay, they have to top her. I mean, all right. Iowa's a football school. Let's call it what it is. It is a football school. Iowa won 8 games last year with a quarterback. It might have won 11. I'm going with the quarterback on this. And this is no slight whatsoever to Bennett Sturtz. And he may be a better point guard than Mark Gronowski is quarterback. However, I think Mark Gronowski could take Iowa's offense from being below average, although last year was a little bit better than below average, to pretty good, actually. If he plays at a high level, he's good. I mean, I've mentioned it for a long time, and I don't know that anybody's catching on, but he's freaking good. And he's been really good at South. I mean, he won the National Player of the Year award when he was at South Dakota State. They won 2 national titles. His stats are off the charts. Last year was his was a semi-rough year. They only got to the semifinals and lost to their arch rival and Cam Miller from Solon in North Dakota State. And you look at his numbers, you're like, wow, they're not that bad. Well, he had a torn labrum, and he's fighting through this, and he's tough. The kid, I remember, I watched this video. 16 degrees when they played Incarnate Word, and they kicked the hell out of him up there in a playoff game. And he's like, he's in short sleeves. And somebody's like, why are you wearing short sleeves? He's like, I figure my linemen can do it. I can suck it up and do it for them too. And he's got that kind of swag, but that brotherhood. And I think that's going to be contagious. And so I'm not in any way, shape, or form slighting Bennett Stertz. I think he was fantastic for Drake. I think he'll be really, really good for Iowa. And I'm not slighting at all Lucy Olson, which I really wish we could cover her one more year because she just brightens she just brightens everybody's day when you talk to her. And those kind of people you are few and far between. But I think Iowa's a football school, and if you can get a quarterback who can compete against Penn State and Oregon, you take that one, and I think he can.
Maybe I'm wrong here, but Stertz is, like, I feel like the sure bet. Like, he's going to be good. Like, I have no doubt that he's going to perform. He's probably going to play every minute of the season and be really good. But so I'm kind of on the...
Yeah, that's fine.
But Stertz at the same time, like, he won't overdo it. Like, he's not going to, like, shot hunt, Like, I looked at the box score from the Missouri game. He was 8 of 11 from the floor. Like, he dominated that game and he took 11 shots, So, I don't know if he's going to be like, he's just not going to care about that. Not that I don't know if Gronowski, I don't think Gronowski is either necessarily, but I think Stertz could have a quietly really good year. But I'm 100, like, I feel so strongly that he's going to be outstanding. I would probably lean, like, I'm more confident that Stertz is going to be good. But I love what you said about Gronowski, because if he does anything at quarterback, it's going to be celebrated so much just because of where things have been. So it's a good chance to get into football conversation here, Scott. You mentioned how good the offense can be. Now, I know Gronowski is not throwing yet, and so he's trying to, learn without fully participating here, but what do you kind of expect from this offense with Mark Gronowski at the helm once he gets going, probably in June?
A slow mesh. It's got to be. No, who knows? That might happen. But I really expect the offense to be much more efficient first and foremost. They have the nucleus of a really good offensive line. They have one big question mark to me, and then two kind of smaller question marks. But largely left tackle is a question mark, and receiver still remains so. But they've got some really good running backs. They've got they got one of the best centers in the country and one of the best right tackles in the country. I think they've got players up front to compete. I do like Addison Ostrenga. I think if he didn't get hurt last year, he was performing at a pretty high level. But I think Gronowski can take them to a different level, someplace they haven't been for a long, long time. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that Brendan Sullivan could actually be a much better player next year too, but just not play nearly as much. But what I like about him is his versatility. I mean, at South Dakota State, he passed for more than 10,000 yards, 93 touchdowns, 20 interceptions, but he also rushed for almost 1,800 yards and 37 touchdowns. You can design runs for him. He's not a running quarterback. He's a dual threat guy, but a pass-first quarterback. He can hit every throw, intermediate, deep, check down, screen, but then what I like about what Tim Lester has built around him that's going to benefit him is that they have versatile players on the perimeter. They have versatile players in the backfield that can play at perimeter spots. TJ Washington being the first, but other players can fit that as well. So I like the fact that they've got a guy who can get it to people, who can lead people, but then also they have skill position players who can do something once the ball's in their hand. And when's the last time we've seen that? 2019 probably, when some of the receivers there, and even then they didn't allow them to have the ball in space a lot back then. And I think Nate was a really good quarterback. He wasn't a very accurate quarterback, and I think Gronowski has the potential to be what Beathard was, and in some cases, maybe even a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that run element with Gronowski is going to be huge. We saw, I mean, with Sullivan, how much the run, his ability to run, helped the offense, but he couldn't, he wasn't the quarterback that Gronowski is. So at least not last year. So I think that's where my cautious optimism is with Gronowski. You wish he had the reps this spring, but also at the same time, like Kirk says, they know what they're getting in him. Now, he said that about Cade too, so it makes me a little bit nervous there. But I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying, like, I just want to see him. I just want to see him with my eyes on the field on Kids Day, like slinging it around, looking good. What was Cade at Kids Day like? 6 for 20 for like 20 yards. It was like something gross. Like it might have been worse than that, to be honest.
Yeah, you're right.
It was so bad. And he threw a pick 6 to somebody. I can't remember who was it. Was it Shire? I can't remember who it was. But anyway, but at least the other guys are getting a ton of spring reps. Hank Brown's number 2. Brendan Sullivan, this is his chance to. I mean, it's a perfect 1-2 if he stays. I kind of think he's going to stay, but I guess we'll see. But you got that way. You have dual threat 1-2 this year, and I think you don't have to change the offense. Like last year was just okay. Is it Cade this week? Okay, no, it's Brendan Sullivan. No, he can run, do all this stuff. Oh, now it's Shaggy, Jackson Stratton. What can we do this week to try to win? And thankfully they had Caleb Johnson last year to kind of save the day for the most part. But I feel like quarterback position is just in such a better spot. So I'm confident. I don't know. You just watching Iowa so long, you just got to wait to see it.
Oh, it's understandable if you want to take I wouldn't say a cynical approach, but a skeptical one, because I'll believe it when I see it. There were significant changes last year on offense. It was off the charts different, and then you look at the 5 losses and you kind of compare them individually with better quarterback play. You were at Michigan State. I think they win that game. With better quarterback play in the last 3 quarters against Iowa State, they probably win that game. Mizzou, that was a really good opponent. And, but then Brendan Sullivan misses an easy completion that would have changed the game. It overthrows his tight end. And there are a couple other plays there too. And that was a 50-50 game. And UCLA was Brendan Sullivan's worst game. They should have blown them out the way things were going from the very beginning with the turnovers, and yet Brendan Sullivan put them back in. You have basic good quarterback play, you're winning those games. Now Ohio State, you're not winning. I'm not even going to pretend that. They won the national title and they were better than Iowa, and they would have been better than Iowa 10 out of 10 times. But maybe once it would have been close. But I think in this situation though, you look at this offense, I think year 2, Tim Lester last year, he had Deacon Hill and Marco Lainez taking snaps. He had Lainez taking snaps with the 2s and 3s. And Deacon, they knew was going to hit the portal. They were just basically saying, please stay through spring so he can hand the ball off, And I think right now that they are in a much, much, much better situation. He was taken off the road so he can work with the offense and figure things out. They got, another set of eyes. Mm-hmm. They got really good running backs. We didn't know that Caleb Johnson would be Caleb Johnson last year. Right. At this time, he was kind of in a really questionable place up until about the second quarter of the first game.
Yeah, exactly. Last thing on football here. We got to talk to some defensive players last week. I focused on the secondary. I got Jonah Pace was there. There was I know you were there too. It's what I took away was just this secondary is just new and it's got energy. It's different. We talked. I've got a lot of feedback on the Union Card podcast we did last football season, and really it felt like that in the secondary at times, and it just felt like It just feels like new blood could be good for this secondary, I guess. And I got good vibe. I mean, they don't have as much experience, obviously, but Cohen and Stringer, okay, for example. I mean, it sounds like he's just such an athletic freak and could be really, really good. Like, could be high draft pick good someday.
Yeah.
Zach Lutmer, we talked about him a little bit, I think, last week or the week before. And I mean, he's got athletic gifts as well. And you throw, hey, maybe WAMPA actually breaks, has a breakthrough this year. I mean, we know he's got the ability. He's kind of due. Those three guys at safety and cash, I'd love that trio right there. However it plays out positionally, and then figure out the corners. I mean, you got to have good corners. Parker's been known. Parker, you just feel good with Phil Parker there, I guess. So I don't know. What do you think about the secondary?
This is the question mark for me, even more so than the other position, even more than linebacker at this point. I mean, I think the secondary is a big question mark, and you start at corner because Jamari was pretty good until he stepped aside late in the year, and which will cost him a draft spot. He probably won't even be drafted now because of it. But Deshaun Lee and TJ Hall rotated along with John Nestor at the other spot, and nobody really had much consistency. I think we saw, though, that they had talent. It was the lack of consistency. Now, I think when you throw those two and Xavier Wampa, they all have something to prove. But I think in some ways, when you remove the barrier and kind of like take the paddles off or the baby the things that they have on their arms and stuff and let them try to swim, sometimes they can swim better. Then they don't have to worry about it. And I think that might be the same case here when you're constantly looking over and you've got Sebastian Castro or you got Quinn Schulte and you're kind of, they're your security blanket that you don't grow as much. Well, now I think they have a chance to grow. And I'd love to see the light come on for Xavier Wampa because he does have a lot of ability. And you just wonder, all right, take that step and you've got it. And then the two corners, now have kind of reached that point of, can they go be Matt Hankins and Michael Ojemudia and players like that? I
mean, even Harris to an extent. I mean,
yeah, right.
Or who was really good for a while last year, like you said.
And then are there the younger ones, Jalen Watson or Rashad Godfrey, who are in that kind of secondary? Are they going to push them? Are they going to be? Phil doesn't have any problems with starting somebody young there.
No,
and he'll do that. And then I totally agree with you about Cohen Entringer. I think he and Zach Lutmer might be the best of the bunch. I really like the way that they play. I think that Entringer is a guy who's on campus actually Wednesday night, and he'll be back in the summer, is Micah Hyde. And that's who Cohen Entringer reminds me of. And if he can take that step like Micah did, that's awesome. Because now Micah's special as a person too. And I think Cohen could be as well. But I mean, Micah's, top 5-10 guys I've covered in football. And then, but then Lutmer, man, I really liked what I saw out of him. I think he could be another one of those prototypical cash if that's where they put him at. The one thing I wonder with him is like Entringer going to be like Dane Belton and like Castro? Is he going to be like the 2-position guy? And then Lutmer's like the single position guy,
Right.
When they go sub package, he comes in. Even so, I think that those two could be the best two out of the unit based on what I've seen so far.
You should ask Kirk to compare Micah Hyde and Cohen Entringer and see what reference will he make if you do that.
He'll start bringing up Sean Constantine.
Jovan Johnson. Anyway.
I know when he brought up Micah Hyde one time at a press conference a couple years ago, I was so mad because like back when Micah was playing, and I remember I was writing a story about Micah, and I asked him, about how he was playing, and he just brought up like Jovan Johnson. It's like he played 8 years ago, dude. I'm writing about him today, and then like 2021 or something, then I asked about him and somebody, and he's talking about Micah Hyde. And I'm like, I could have used that quote 10 years ago, man.
Exactly. It's fun. Yeah, Tyler always laughs when he makes a 1981 reference.
Yeah,
especially. He's like, oh my God, that's like 20 years before I was born.
I know.
It's so funny.
I know it's like the Dallas Clark story. It's like Dallas Clark. None of these kids that you have on your team were born when he played.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really close to that.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of a fun little game we play.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of football, Circa Sports Iowa is the app if you're into sports betting, designed by players for players, inspired by years spent on both sides of the sportsbook counter. The Circa Sports app brings your wish list to life. I checked in with some of my other friends who have the Circa app, and one of the things they really like about it is you can get two-sided yes/no future bets, which is that's a really cool feature, because a lot of the sports books will say, like, will Iowa make the Sweet 16, for example, like in women's basketball, but there's not a no option, so you don't get like that balanced odds. So you have to just, if you want to bet, you can only bet yes, or whatever. That's one thing that they really like about them. You can include future bets in parlays. That's kind of a cool thing. They feature aggressive, higher than most betting limits for everyone, even proven winners. So they don't restrict, or they set high limits for what you can bet. So if you're a player, download the Circa Sports Iowa app today for the best and sharpest odds anywhere. Visit circasports.com/Iowa and be watching and listening for more on Circa Sports and Circa Resort and Casino in the months ahead from our Iowa Everywhere team. I know all the guys. We don't ever get invited out there to Circa Las Vegas, but I know a lot of the Chris Williams and his buddies, Hassel, they're always out there. We've never been invited out there. No. Never. But anyway. No. Maybe now that we're plugging Circa, maybe we will.
Yeah.
Well, and there's our Masters bets. There's our Masters bets on the screen. I liked you went out of the box there, Scott. Brooks Koepka.
I did. I just pulled a name out of the hat, and it turned out to be Brooks here on that one. So Brooks,
A+ pick, Scott. It's you and me this week.
Yeah.
There you go. All right.
Aiden also went with Brooks Koepka. So,
nice.
Well, I thought about Rory. It's easy to go with Scheffler, but
Yeah, no, yeah. I liked it. You probably should have just gone Scheffler. But anyway, I got Ludwig Oberg. Keith Murphy stole my pick. Man, and he went first in the video, Aiden. Did you put that together? Did you put Murphy first?
I might have.
Oh, man. Aiden doing me dirty here. Anyway, yeah. Ludwig Oberg. Keith was funnier about it. My bet is, you guys have to watch the video, I guess, but if you didn't, my bet is no. It might be too late now by the time you're listening to this, but no hole-in-ones this week. You can get I think you can get a plus 155 now on Circa. No holes in one at the Masters. Anyway, Scott, you got an article that came out this morning. My Ben McCullum column came out this morning. You had an article this morning on the app. I know. Isn't it funny that it's a 𝗀cie coach again? Yeah. Anyway, you have a column this morning on preseason football games at the Athletic. Tell us about that.
Last month, Chad, Colorado and Syracuse applied and wanted to have a spring scrimmage against one another. And it was turned down by the Division I Football Oversight Committee for FBS. But it wasn't outright set. They didn't really say no forever. It was just, you can't really do it this late in the process. And because it's unfair to everybody else, it'd be an unfair recruiting advantage, but it's something that we'll discuss at a future meeting. Well, last fall, I had I grabbed Tony Petitti and I asked him about that opportunity. And he was non-committal but interested. He said, I'm kind of interested in what people think about this, and so when this proposal came out, I thought, I'm going to kind of revisit this. And I grabbed Kirk Ferentz after one of his press conferences and asked him about it. And he goes, well, I've been wanting to do this forever, about a spring scrimmage. He goes, we should have been doing it with Missouri like 8 years ago. And then I said, well, what about preseason football? He goes, as long as the games don't count, absolutely. And and he was probably more interested in like the joint team activity scrimmages than the game itself.
Yeah,
but
the
the
NFL
game
does, yep.
Yeah, because there's a lot of times that's what they do, that they'll practice against one another for a couple of days and then play a game. But he brought up his youth at Pittsburgh. He goes, yeah, we used to have scrimmages every Saturday for 2 weeks, and then we'd play a game. In the NFL, we had preseason. And then I looked around and found in Division II, there's a spring scrimmage this weekend between Nebraska Kearney and University of Sioux Falls. And in Division III, you're allowed to have like a preseason scrimmage. So preseason football, like one preseason game, is something to me I think could absolutely be a major positive. Not just because it breaks up camp and you can play an opponent, but you think about financially, it's another home gate. You think about the opportunity to get your players, you can see what they're able to do without having that Labor Day weekend game against an FCS team from upstate New York. You could do that too. The opportunities for Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. It's like, well, we're not going to play in the regular season, but we can have this game. An Iowa State play Minnesota in a preseason game. Or you go the other route, which is, let's say Iowa plays a preseason game against Northern Iowa, and then regular season, and you play in Iowa City. 50,000 people show up. Maybe you charge same as you would anything else, but that's a heck of a good home gate. And then, well, now we're going to play a neutral site game against Texas A&M and Jerry World, or you're going to go to Atlanta and play Clemson or something like that. That's what there's the SEC and Big Ten are looking for ways to compete against one another in real football. Now, maybe this figures into that. Maybe it just, again, massages other games out of the way. But I think this has real legs if it wants to. Now, I also talked to some players, Iowa players, and they were kind of split. Cohen Entringer, yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to do it. Jonah Pace was like, well, I don't really want to take any time away from our practice. We already practice the best against the best. So that's fair and that's healthy.
Yeah.
It needs to happen. I talked to Josh Whitman from Illinois, and he was like, the logistics might be too much. For another game date, for something like that. Yeah. However, but I think it's something that's worth strongly considering.
Yeah, I like the on the surface, logistics aside, Mr. Whitman, I like the idea of how the NFL does it. Like you said, joint practices. Let's say you could block off Wednesday through Saturday. Okay, you've got. This year, they do it in the NFL all the time, like Chicago and Indianapolis or whatever, Chicago and Denver. They've done it all. They do it all the time. Pretty much every team does it. And you play like ones versus ones in those practices, maybe. And then you play the game against the team, right? Or whatever. You play the game against the team like that 2 days later or something. And maybe you play the starters one series, maybe not even at all. But maybe that's a game. But I think the best advantage to that, Scott, is let Hank Brown start. You know what I mean? Like Hank Brown start the game. Let Sam Phillips, get some legs here at the FBS level. Let guys that maybe are going to redshirt. Let's say last year, like Brevin Dahl, my guy. Let him play some snaps. And just get a feel for the game. And like, what is the harm there? And it would be so much more attended than like a spring game. Yeah. You could easily put it as part of the, like you said, like they do in the NFL, like the season ticket package. Maybe it's a reduced cost, like $25 to get in or something. But still, if you have a season ticket, that's part of your season ticket package. But hey, I got season tickets, So I like just kind of that concept of it, and then maybe you flip it the next year. You're on the road the next year or whatever. But I'm glad Kirk was interested. I thought he would kind of. Just when you started saying that, I was like, he's probably going to poo-poo it. But no, he's Mr. NFL. So yeah, I could see him liking it. What else do you like about it? What other ideas do you have in your head, Scott? Let's get it going here.
Yeah, and basketball coaches have been talking about doing this for years. Like, why can't we just have exhibitions? And, instead they have like nothing games, it's like, well, why don't we have a real exhibition? But, I brought up to Kirk and he's like, we're looking for ways to make money. And this is one way to do it. And not only for your gate, But then you think about TV contracts. You know, if you're looking at mid-August, it's a wasteland because you have NFL preseason games, which are interesting for about 5 minutes of each game. They're terrible. And then baseball is baseball. Either you like it or you don't. And then, you know, I really, the last thing I ever want to watch on TV is the Little League World Series, and it's all just plastered in the middle of August. If you're gonna have like Michigan against Alabama, and they're having joint workouts, you don't think SEC Network would want to televise it, or PTN? All these games, I mean, it gives great content, and it's on TV. Would I want to watch? Okay, today Wisconsin and Auburn are playing on a Friday night at Camp Randall, or these workouts. I mean, I think it's like, oh gosh, this is awesome. And you know, as I mentioned earlier, you know, like Iowa State, Minnesota, they're only like 2.5 hours, 3 hours apart or whatever. And it's a bus trip. You can work out with one another, then play a game in preseason. Or what could be even better in the big picture is maybe teams decide and the leagues kind of decide for them. If we move your, you know, let's say Iowa State decides to pick up South Dakota, or Iowa picks up Northern Iowa or Western Illinois, then you can have another opponent in your regular season, especially if the Big Ten has 4 available opportunities in the playoff. Then you can play an SEC team, and it's not going to hurt you. So I think there's a lot of positives here. There are some drawbacks. You know, again, Jonah Pace was the one who was kind of a little bit down on it, and it was like, it's already a long season. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I respect that. You know, it is a long season, but I also know what it's like. I've covered those joint practices in the games, like when I used to cover the Chiefs and they played the Vikings, and they were hyped unbelievably because they're finally stopped hitting each other, and they're hitting somebody else. I
mean, yeah, it doesn't really. It's like, it's just another practice, essentially. You just have another team in there, something different, you know? Hey, how does our offense work against, you know? Yeah. How does our offense look against the not Iowa defense, you know? Yeah, right. That's like super sound and technical, and it'd be nice to like go against something different or whatever, you know? So, yeah. Anyway, love the idea.
Yeah, so we'll see if it goes
replace
anywhere.
Kids Day, you know, like I mean, all due respect to Kids Day, but like replace the Kids Day scrimmage with, you know, I mean, that's what, day 9 of practice for Iowa in camp, and then let's say you eventually move spring football back to the summer, which I think is a great idea. Yeah, you know, just almost like a mini camp. I mean, you should be pretty well prepared to at least play a game. I mean, Iowa does a scrimmage the next week anyway. A team scrimmage, so it's not like, you know, and it's not a real game. I like the idea of just playing a lot of backups. I mean, I think that's the most valuable part. Guys that maybe aren't going to get hit a lot during the season, you know. You don't need to play Jay Higgins in that game or whatever, you know, but maybe it'd be nice to play Jaden Harrell. Yeah. Or this year, Cam Buffington. Yeah. You know, Derek Weisskopf. Preston Reese, get those guys some reps, you know.
Yeah, and Mr. Progressive Kirk Ferentz also had other ideas too. So, which was
what's that?
He goes, I would gladly. I don't think he's even made the article, but he goes, I would gladly remove some practices from the spring if we could have OTAs and a mini camp in June. And
I'm with him totally. Yeah.
He goes, we've already blown June up. Right. You know, you used to go on golf tournaments and stuff, and now it's all football. So he goes, if we're going to do that, we might as well work out. And I think that totally makes sense. I mean, I wrote it in late December on things that need to happen in the off season. And it's like, remove spring football, have OTAs, like a 3-day OTA in March, a 3-day OTA in April, and then the lion's share of your practices in June, because how many guys, even now at Iowa, Mark Gronowski being among them, can't compete because they had off-season surgeries or they got hurt, you know, Brian Allen or somebody like that. Happens every year. And if you push that back to June, but I thought that was fascinating about preseason, because I think it just changes the dynamic of it a little bit. And, you know, the other point that he made was, he goes, now we're at 105. We don't have these opportunities. So these are really good for us to get another look. And, you know, and Petiti, who I talked to, he was more or less like, he was intrigued. He literally was intrigued by it. But he goes, I just kind of wonder, would they play it like a regular game, or this be more of an evaluation? Would people play a series, or whatever? And that's up to everybody, and
right.
As long as the results don't stick to you, it happens from time to time. But I think it'd be, on the long run, healthy for the sport if that happens. And as I mentioned in the story, there is precedent. When you look at Division 3 allows for scrimmages in August, and Division 2, like this weekend, they have spring scrimmages. I just don't think the spring makes sense, because you have a lower amount of players, some still out, that, if you could do it, great, but I would think that August is where you'd want to do it.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think, like you said, Kirk said, OTAs in the spring. Guys are recovering from surgeries anyway. Maybe it curtails a little bit of this early enrollee necessity for these high school kids to get to college by the January of their senior year of high school. Maybe you don't have to rush into that, and maybe enjoy your senior year a little bit. But once you hit in June, which all of them get their June 2nd or June 9th or whatever it is, then you're going. You got actual practices, which you can't. You can do conditioning now, but you can't do actual practices. But then let them do practices. It's kind of silly, Just move it to there. So, and then that would get you ready for these exhibition preseason games in early August, which would be, like you said, awesome for TV. Heck, BTN. Even if you couldn't air every one of them live, you could record them and put them into a 60-minute version or something like that, and have commentary. And hey, here's this freshman recruit. He won't play this year, but let's get a look at him. It's just, it makes too much sense, so they probably won't do it, Scott.
That evaluate. Yeah, well, you never know now. Now that you're talking about it, if
you're talking about dollars, maybe they will. Yeah,
it's like even if it's, let's go on the low end. Let's say 40,000 people go to Kinnick at $25. A ticket. Do the math. You're making some money there. Maybe you're paying a guarantee if it's an FCS, and maybe you're doing a home and home if it's with a Mizzou or somebody like that. Maybe another. Well, you wouldn't. I don't think you'd want to do another Big Ten team, even if you don't play them. That could be.
You could find teams. Yeah. You could find teams.
You could fly somewhere, and it's a good way to, again, break up camp, because I've seen in the NFL it gets really dreary, and they get really dreary too. But and it's a great evaluation opportunity, because, as you said, and Hank Brown, you see him every single day against Iowa's defense, and sometimes it's not a true evaluation if Iowa's defense is really, really, really good, which it has been in the past. And it's like, God, you can't do anything against them, But then you do it against somebody else and you look a lot better, or you look different. And I think, offensive linemen in the same way. So I think that's important.
Yeah, and if every team handles it, every team would handle it with Petitti's questions, like how would teams? Well, every team was different. Like if you were Iowa last year, for example, if you really looked at it the right way, you say, let's use this to put McNamara and Sullivan out there. Let's put them in competition against another team, and then make our week 1 quarterback decision. Maybe the season plays out differently. It just depends on the team.
Exactly. So, in some teams, I'm sure the coaches would want to have an agreement of sorts. It's not so much with Power 5 competition. It'd be like FCS, because if you bring, Northern Iowa or Western Illinois or somebody like that, they're going to look at it as, wow, this is our opportunity. And and you're only playing your starters for a quarter. And then, that you don't want them celebrating like they won the Super Bowl if they beat you in a preseason game, but, they're playing their starters for 4 quarters and you're playing them for 2 series. But then again, maybe it's good for you to do that against a team that's really energetic. So I don't know. I love the opportunity, the possibility, and it would really add a lot of flavor to August. And there's BTN Plus. They could go on there, and then they could rotate them and cut them into 1 hour. And
Peacock.
Lots
of options.
Absolutely.
Great show. That was fun to talk some football there, Scott.
Yes.
A lot of football. Well,
Love
I like
football.
I'm gonna dig into your story right now. Thanks for listening, folks. This is Chad Leistikow, Scott Dochterman. We'll be back with you next Thursday here on Legends and Listeners, only on Iowa Everywhere.